Okay, no one say anything embarrassing from now on. And share the screen. Okay. Yay! All right, welcome everyone to Madison, Wisconsin Administrator Group. We're gonna do Summer 22. It feels like we just did Summer 20 not that long ago, but here we are. But let's get our introductions out of the way before we get to the fun stuff. So we have 3 official user group or co-leaders in the Madison and Milwaukee area. For those of you who are first time, we used to be one big happy group, and then Salesforce says you got to have a metro area assigned to your name. So we're technically Madison and Milwaukee, with Squire taking control over Milwaukee, but we simply work together. We're all friends. We all get along. We have members that go back and forth. The last I heard, Squire, we are short 1 community leader. Have you made any headway on that?
Lots of questions, not a lot of like I'll say a lot of people are very interested, but not a lot of people are like.
So the pipeline really early is filled.
Yeah, we're not closing those leads. Yeah.
Okay. So if you are interested in potentially helping Squire out and becoming a co-leader from the Milwaukee user group, please reach out to Squire. We are happy to talk to you about what does it take, what does it look like, what do we do, blah, 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 all that good stuff. Any of us you can reach out to, and we're happy to have that discussion. But you know, since Squire is the one running the show, he's probably the prime person to talk to for that particular thing. Generally speaking, if you have any questions regarding the user group, you can reach out to any of us. We are happy to hear from you and help you if we can. So why we're here? Mainly because we all need to have an hour and a half away from work to do something more interesting. But really, we're here for networking. We're here to share our knowledge and expertise, and sometimes just complain. Because let's face it, sometimes those, end users of ours, well, admins drink for a reason. But we all want to help each other succeed at the bottom line. And we do that by basically pooling our massive brains into one big pot and hopefully being all better for it. To do that, that means we need to hear from you. And it can't just be the co-leaders and random guests. Everyone in this virtual room has got a story to tell. And we would love to hear it. It doesn't have to be something really super advanced. It could be something that you think is really basic that you think everyone should know, because I will guarantee you everyone doesn't know it. It doesn't have to be something that was a success. Sometimes we learn best from our failures. And as I tell my children, I would rather have you learn from my failures than to learn it by failing yourself. So if you have something and you would like to even do a 5-minute little presentation or talk about it, please reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. And to get you involved in our meetings. Okay, there are other groups that we have in the area. The number seems to be growing. We got folks over in Appleton and Green Bay. We got nonprofit groups. We have marketing groups. We have developer groups and so forth. We all are friends together. And if you go to our community group on the Trailblazer community, we have these all listed out with links and all that fun stuff. I don't know of anyone off the top of my head who's going to have a meeting, except for I'm pretty sure Milwaukee's having one next month, right, Squire? Or did he leave?
He had to bounce.
Oh, he had to bounce.
But yes, Milwaukee will have one next.
That makes my picking on him in transitions really difficult.
I'm sorry.
Upcoming events. We've had a couple already with Trailhead DX, and I think Northeast Streaming was just recently, but we have Southeast Streaming, Dreaming in Color, Porcelandia, and Midwest Streaming up in Minneapolis coming up this summer. You can see all those community events and more down at the community calendar. Who's planning on going to the Midwest Streaming in Minneapolis in July? See Aubrey, John. Great, I'm jealous. Go, pretend you're me and maybe get some swaggers, do something, because I won't be able to go. Okay, now I'm going to open the floor up. Does anyone have anything want to share? Job opportunities at your organization, New certifications, something to celebrate. Don't be shy. No, none? Okay. Let's move on to summer 22. Now, because I'm doing an official presentation at the request of Jen, since we're not doing these live, I have to put on the wizard hat. Okay.
Thanks, Brian. Love
You're
it.
welcome. It's not going to get any use otherwise. It gets lonely. Okay, so summer 22. I'm going to preface this by this is not the full release notes. If you're someone who's specializing in manufacturing cloud, we're not covering this for you, right, John? You got to go read the release notes yourself. We really are focusing on what we kind of consider like core stuff, which means it's service and sales, general platform items that are not necessarily developer specific and not what we would call an add-on product. Something like high velocity sales, we usually don't cover because that's something you have to buy on top of Sales Cloud. So that being said, if you are using one of those other products, maybe you're using Marketing Cloud or whatever the case may be, go read the release notes, at least look over for it. The way that I tend to read these is I go to that very first section that's basically how and when do features come out, and it's broken up into sections, and it'll tell you, hey, what it is with a link to more of the descriptions. And I start by going through that whole thing going, well, this sounds interesting, or this could be impactful to me or to a customer. I highlight it, or in my case, I put it in a quick doc for Jen, and then take note of like, is it something that's automatic or something I have to enable or something that I have to contact support? And that's how I kind of pared down that 400-page document down into something manageable. I think we ended up with going from something like 10, 15 pages of feature listing down to what, page and a half? Something like that. So it's manageable. At the very least, you should look at that part of the release doc. Okay. So steaming forward ahead, we're going to talk about Orchestrator. And yes, it is technically an add-on, but we all get 600 runs of an orchestration to begin with. So I do want to cover it because you can technically use it as part of your normal licensing scheme. You just want to be aware of the fact that if you're going to go over 600 for whatever your use case is, you need to talk to your AE to make sure that that's a feature you want to use and afford. And there's a bunch of things coming out. So this was generally available last release. And I've been using it for some of my customers, and I would say it works pretty well. There are definitely, let's say, improvements and features missing, but they're kind of working up to it. So one of them that I really like is being able to associate a flow from the orchestrator. So for people who maybe haven't seen Orchestrator before, think of it as a meta flow. It's basically a flow that contains flows that can either be automatic or assigned to a specific user. So I can say, Jen gets this flow, Jen gets that flow, Aubrey gets this other flow. And you have to go through and have all those flows built before you build your orchestrator. And then if you go through and realize, oh, I need to make an edit, you have to leave the orchestrator, go back to the flow list, find that flow, open the flow, kind of a pain. But now there's a button in the flow step that lets you open the flow directly from the orchestrator. So it saves you from having to leave it and go find it in your flow list, which makes things a lot nicer. There's this milestone in orchestration history. This is really about things like being canceled, or what's the other wonderful thing that they have in there, or deleted. It's just showing more data of the orchestration history of what's going on in there. Not really useful from an end user perspective. It's more useful from an admin perspective for my plane. The other one is you can access a running orchestration that's been paused by using the $orchestration.instance. So the idea with that is you can have that accessible in a formula field on the record and say, hey, that's the instance of the orchestration that's running. I need to wake that up, which is interesting. being able to see the orchestrations in the Flow Trigger Explorer. So Flow Trigger Explorer was this new feature that came out last release that lets us basically say, here's all the flows that we have running on cases, and I want to run them in a particular order. And now if you have an orchestrator that is being triggered by object, you can see the orchestrator in that list as well. So it gives you a fuller picture of what's happening. Other little things, which is quite honestly, I don't know why it took them a release to do this. We can now deploy orchestrations with chain sets. And there's some more things that we can do in regard to list views within the orchestrator. It's more of an actual list view feature if you're looking at work items. The screenshot that we see below is actually from the Trigger Explorer. And I just wanted to show it because I thought I really liked the icon that they used for the orchestrator. That's the one that looks like a wizard with no hat. I'm not sure what that's actually called. I'm sure it's probably conveniently
It's a
named.
conductor. It's a conductor. It looks like
Like an electrical conductor?
no, like for
Train conductor. John thinks it's a train conductor. I guess that could be a train horn it's pulling. All right. Thank you for the laugh. No one appreciates my terrible humor. All right. There's been a lot of improvements to the Flow Trigger Explorer itself. One of them is the fact that we can drag and drop the run order for the triggers that are in the Explorer. And so you would actually go to the Trigger Explorer and there is this edit order button. And you click that and it basically gives you the capability to drag and drop, makes it a lot easier. One thing that's really neat is now you can create a flow from the Explorer. And the reason you might want to do that is that it pre-populates a bunch of things in the flow itself. So let's say you're looking at the Flow Explorer for cases. So you're looking at all the cases that are running after an update. If you clicked new flow, it will automatically set the object of the case, automatically set it to be an update flow trigger, and you're off to the races. It kind of makes it a shortcut for getting in and building new flows based on what's on the Explorer. One thing that I'm really psyched about is being able to see and access the flows from the object page. That's what I have in the screen layout here. So if you go to Object Manager and you look at an object, there's now a flow trigger section near the bottom of the page, left side menu, and that will show all the triggers that are tied to that particular case. And it also shows the orchestrators, and which is why I have the screenshot. You can see there's a couple of auto launch record triggered flows, and then there's an orchestrator on cases in this particular example. Just from an admin standpoint, I like this because I don't know about you. If I was coming into a newish org, one of the things I always had trouble with is finding what are all the automations going on, and being able to go object by object to say, okay, here's the triggers. Apex triggers was always nice, but now we can get to the flow triggers, which is going to make things a little bit more easy to do. The other thing I like about this is we can now access the Flow Trigger Explorer and create new flows for that object from this page. And the last thing I'm going to mention on the Flow Trigger experience is there's shortcuts. So I don't know how many folks are shortcut happy folks, who keyboard shortcuts. And I got to read off the list here. So things that would work now is like escape keys, arrow keys, space bars. You can change like the focus of where you are using F6 or Shift F6 to go in the reverse direction. I've played around with them and I haven't quite figured out why I would actually use those shortcuts in the Flow Trigger Explorer yet, but that's probably just because I got used to using it without having the shortcuts available. But if you're a keyboard person, they're out there for you. Hey, Jen, are you monitoring the chat?
Yeah,
Okay,
I got you.
thank you. All right, I just saw the comments and I realized I wasn't looking.
You don't have to.
I know, thank you. All right, flow stuff. As we all know, Flow is basically the automation of choice for Salesforce. Workflow rules are going to be going away eventually. Process builders are going to be going away eventually. We're all going to flows. And so there's a lot of development going into the flow function to make it more accessible and easy to use, and so forth. One of the things is the view all data permissions for debugging flows. So I have to read this. So only users with the view all data permissions enabled can debug a record or schedule trigger flow. Essentially what that means is if you're an admin, you don't have to worry about it. If you're not a standard system admin who is, I guess, able to access and build flows, you do need to have the view all data to be able to debug it. There must be use cases out there why that's important. I don't know of anyone who's a non-system admin who's going to be doing debug. I'll be really interested if you work in an organization that has that. Two-column flow layouts are superseded by multi-column screens. This is a big change. People who are used to kind of like the default screen setup where you have 2 columns on your screen flows, starting in winter 23, those 2-column layouts are going to get ignored, and you should start using the sections component on those screens. So any old screen flows you have built that are using that 2-column layout, you're going to want to go through and plan an update on those to start using sections in order to keep the kind of look and feel of that screen right now. This honestly is probably the biggest change, I think, from a flow standpoint that we have in this release, because it's going to impact potentially a lot of flows, because we've been having that 2-column layout on screens for years now. And so if you have been a heavy duty screen flow user, this could really impact you come winter 23. I'm looking at you, Jen. All right. Dependent pick list component. So they rebuilt this. This component is for screen flows. Essentially lets us use dependent pick lists in our screens. It's a little funky of a component. I was playing around with it. It does work. It doesn't mean you get to create your own dependent pick list fields just for the flow. The pick list has to be dependent normally, if that makes sense. Meaning that if it's on the page, it has to already be set up as a dependent pick list for it to work. The main key here is that it's just been rebuilt, so it actually runs faster. Not that you're probably ever going to notice it, but Lightning Web Component is just simply a faster setup than the old Aura components. But if you're using dependent pick lists in any of your screen flows now, I would recommend you check to confirm that nothing breaks with the summer 22 release. Okay. The big thing is, we talked about workflow rules going away at the start of this particular slide, and Salesforce did put out a convert workflow rules to flow migration tool. It was, I believe, beta last release. Now it's generally available. And the main reason it's generally available is because we can now use formula criteria as starting conditions for our record triggered flows. That was not something that we could have done in previous releases, which means if you ever had any workflow rule that was just using the formula as the criteria, we couldn't migrate that. Now we can. I have not tried the convert tool yet with Summer 22. To be quite honest with you, though, I personally find that migrating makes a little bit more sense. I just do it manually, because with workflow rules, it's just so simple that I didn't really find the 2 when it was beta to be all that faster than me just doing it myself. But your mileage may vary, especially if you're maybe not someone who's all that comfortable with flow yet. My recommendation is you use a sandbox, convert your workflow rule to a flow, and then check out the flow and use that as kind of a learning tool on how flow is set up if you're not all that familiar with it. I'm not sure if I would really be one of those people who are like, oh, I really don't know flow, but I have to migrate on my workflow rules. So I'm just going to hit the migration for every one of these workflow rules and think it's going to be good enough. You really do want to review it, because any tool, I will guarantee you, is never going to be 100% foolproof. And you're going to want to make sure that everything's working the way you want it to work if you're doing that migration. All right.
So
Yes.
pause for a couple of questions that
Yes.
came in. So Nathan wanted to know any word on being able to use is cloned in Flow. So I think you're talking about a function there, Nathan, that you're looking
Yeah.
for.
So in certain cases, I'm using in the auto process builder, I'm using is cloned to as a trigger for some things. And right now, that's one thing that's not available in flows. So just wondering if you know if it's getting pulled, if that command is getting pulled over, or that.
So I'll put it this way, Nathan. No, I don't know.
Okay.
Mainly because, as much as I know some of the PMs, they don't typically tell me everything. However, what I can say is, just generically speaking, if it's available to do in workflow rules or process builder, they're working really hard to make sure you can do it in Flow in some way or form, simply because of the fact they want people to migrate over. The other thing I have heard publicly is that the formula builder options that that have accessible in Flow, they are working on updating those too. So when that is going to come out and what the final look of that is, don't know. I will say that the formula criteria with that's in Summer 22 does look pretty comprehensive, although I don't know if that is clone bit is in there or not. But we're going to do a demo in a moment, and we can take a look at that really quickly as well to see if it's there.
I don't think that it is. There is a idea out there on the Idea Exchange I just posted. So everyone go vote for Nathan. So we can get is closed sooner than later. I do mention functions on formulas and stuff later, but that one is not in there. So so just wanted to catch up on that question. And then there was another question in here. Has there been any end of life date released yet for any existing workflow rules and process builder? I don't think there has been. I did see 2023 out there at some point
for workflow rules. Yeah, they did say something. I want to say a Trailhead DX, but I haven't seen like a formal like URL posted blog. There was a blog post made at Dreamforce time that kind of talked through things a little bit off of I can't remember the Salesforce blog site, but I don't.
Admins.
But they were pretty vague, and like they didn't say by February 2023 or something like that.
I think once it's official, we'll definitely talk about it.
Yeah,
but I haven't seen it.
My
yet
guess would be the order of operations would be workflow rules and then process builder down the line, just because process builder is so much more complicated than a workflow rule is. And it doesn't mean that things will stop working. It just means they'll probably start off with, you don't get to build more. So just be aware of that if you have a workflow rule now, it's not going to stop working, but you're going to want to make plans to migrate it, because if you have to update that automation in some way or form, you're not going to be able to create a new workflow rule. But
and Andy Schmeekin joined us late.
Hi, Andy.
He just posted the blog on the flow and end of life stuff that was
thank you very much, Andy.
out there. So
good timing to have that on hand. One thing I want to mention with the voting idea, and this probably is for you more, Nate, is if you have use case examples of why it's important to you, put that in a comment and say, here's an example of why I need it, because I find that is a lot more persuasive to a PM who can go through and see, oh, this is how people are actually using it, than people just saying, yeah, me too, I want this.
Yeah. or complaining like, why doesn't Salesforce have this yet?
Why not?
That comment drives me crazy. It's like, that's not useful for anybody.
Yep. All right. I'm going to do this one from the bottom up. Because I was intending to have these in a different order and I completely forgot to put them in a different order, but that's okay. It means that things are a little bit different. The big thing here is the CPU time consumption. So previously the CPU time measurement wasn't all that accurate. And you may know that CPU time is one of those governor limits on Apex and flows, and it's shared. And so it is enforced in Summer 22 that the way that they're measuring CPU time is changing, which means something that may have worked, say, in 2020, may suddenly start hitting CPU time hits now. So if you haven't, I would do some checks, especially in some of your larger record triggered flows in particular, simply because of the fact that if those fail, that can definitely cause the potential disruption to someone's work. And I can tell you from experience, it happens. We actually have a flow for a customer that worked literally just fine, and now it's starting to fail with Summer 22. This is a beta. The send screen flows to Slack. I mean, Salesforce bought Slack, and based on what I saw in Trailhead DX, they're kind of going all in and trying to integrate everything and anything. And Flow seems to be one of the ways that they are making automation span across Salesforce, Slack, and Tableau. And so this is one of the items. I don't have Slack to be able to integrate with that, but if you are a Slack customer with Salesforce, there might be some options for you to at least learn about this feature to see, does it make sense to try it out or not? It is beta though, and with all beta and pilot stuff, I usually encourage to say this is a great thing to test with and learn about, not necessarily depend upon from a production standpoint, because anything in beta and definitely in pilot can change or even completely go away before it gets generally available. One pilot, and I just list this pilot out there so that people know that it's there if this is something that you have now, is being able to have custom screen components. So these are like lightning components that you have created yourself, can react to other components on the same screen element. I don't have any, so I'm not all that interested in this particular pilot, but if you're a heavy flow user that has a whole bunch of custom components that you've gotten from maybe a package, or you have your own developer, it may be something you're interested in. So I would recommend you at least read about it in the release notes. And then for all pilots, you do have to talk to your Salesforce contact, which is typically your AE, if you are interested in joining. Otherwise, just be aware of it and then wait for it to come out as a beta or generally available. All right. The demo we're going to do today is about this test 1, 2, 3 flow, which I like the title, but as the titles goes, it is completely non-descriptive of what this feature is, which is why we're going to do a demo. And I know that's just Jen and John and I with our screens up, but show of hands or whatever in the chat, how many people here absolutely love debugging flow and the fact that you can't really test them? Come on, someone has to love it. Makes it fun, challenging, interesting. Okay, so one of the common complaints I always heard about flow is I can't test that my flow is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Yes, you can write Apex unit tests, which in my opinion kind of defeats the purpose of having a declarative tool. So they made a change to that, and we're going to take a look at that today. So let me just find the proper screen. Here we go, and blow this up a little bit and make sure I'm still logged in because I had that problem earlier. Great. So I have a record triggered flow here. It is a terrible, terrible flow, mainly because I just needed a really weird example where it is record triggered. So it is looking at accounts that have been created or updated, where the name contains the word test in it, and the rating is hot. And then I had 2 decisions, one that checks to see if there's an account number. If there is account number, I go take a look to see what the account type is. And then if it's a prospect, I create an opportunity. If it's a customer direct, I send an email. And then I don't do anything for some other items. So probably not a flow most people would ever actually use, but it's neat because it will show off this little view tests. So we have this new button next to debug called view test beta. And if we click on this, we have now a few different paths, items that we have selected. So these are tests that I created, and I'm just going to go ahead and edit this so you can see what it looks like. So it starts with calling it something and saying, what do you want to test if he gets? So in this case, I'm testing when a record is created, and I'm testing the immediate path versus an asynchronous path or a scheduled path. And then I can come through here and say, well, what do I want for my record values when the record is being created? So you can see here's my wonderful set of fields, or I can pick an existing account up here. But right now I'm just using this. So you can see here I have my rating is hot. I have no account number. And then this is what I really, really like, is you can set an assertion. Essentially, an assertion is asserting or ensuring that your flow has done something. Meaning that in this case, I'm saying, look, when this is done, I want to make sure that my account number is 000123456. And then in this particular one, I'm saying I want to have a custom message, and this is what my message is. So now that I'm here, I can go click run and view details. And we can see a couple of things. One, on the right-hand side, you can see my assertion failed. It goes through and says, hey, we expected 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I get my wonderful little custom failure message because the count number should be filled in and that it's really null. And I can see the path the flow took. So quite clearly, because I know when I created this test that there was no account number, something's wrong because this decision is saying that it has an account number when it really shouldn't. It should go the other way around. So if I edit this particular element, I can quickly see that I have my logic backwards. This shouldn't be true. This should be false, because saying you have a value filled in means that it's not null. So if I go back and save, and I hit the not debug, view tests again and run it, I can see my path is going the correct way. I still fail because that path isn't actually doing anything. We can do this on a couple of different things. So like here's a different one. So this is basing on update. And what I really like about this is we can say, hey, this is what the record looks like when the record is created. So you can see I have an account number, I got a name, I got a rating, but I don't have a type specifier. And then we have another option where it says set updated triggering record, where I get the exact same thing we just looked like with all my fields already filled in. And I can come down and say, all right, my type is going to be prospect. And then I can do my assertions. Now, I like this. It is what I would consider incomplete. And the main reason why it's incomplete is when I'm asserting, the only thing I can get was the ID from the opportunity of the create. And I don't know what the ID is going to be. So I'm actually cheating on this when it's basically saying, hey, this ID has to start with 006, which is an opportunity ID. We can add multiple assertions. If you don't already have a custom message, you can add it here. So if we go and run this one, we get see our little path. We see our little sign down here, and we can go through and take a look at all the wonderful stuff. And you can see this failed because I didn't specify the opportunity name in my create records. So this is like debug on steroids. I absolutely love that it's able to do this. And actually creating these are really, really, really easy to do, because all you have to do is specify your name, setup, and you basically can fill in what your records are. It's almost like creating an Apex test, just not quite. The one other one, I won't run this. I just want to show it to you. So I have an action, which was sending an email. There's no way for me to go through and say, was the email successfully sent? So the closest I can do for this assertion is to say, hey, this element, the email that I have, should have been visited if everything was working correctly. I don't know if it's successful. I don't know if it went to the right people or anything like that, but I know that it at least fired. So like I said, it's not 100% perfect yet, but this is hands down way better than what we've been able to do in the past. And I like that it saves these tests so I can easily come back and kind of run them over and over and over again, or make updates to them as they go on.
So when you say they save them, Brian, like if you build a separate flow that's intended to do something different, but you still would like to use these tests, can you transfer them from flow to flow? Or
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's tied to the flow, but look, we could do it really quick. Record trigger. Count. We'll just make it be the same thing. We'll show the formula why we're here, because we were going to do that anyways. So here's all the wonderful functions now accessible. Let's see. I don't see. Nope. No is cloned. We'll just do none for right now to get it going. And then I have to save this. And you can see there's nothing here yet.
Okay. All the
So-
same, it's still fun.
Yeah, it is still massively better. And, I can go back and forth, John, on whether I would want it to be able to be transitioned between flow to flow. On one hand, you can imagine with the number of flows we could be building even on one object, that list could get really, really long. And I kind of like being able to segregate things to be able to say it's just to be used for this. So you don't have someone trying to test a flow that shouldn't be tested.
I imagine if you do a save as new a new flow, it would probably keep those tests.
Don't know. I haven't tried it. We can certainly try it.
I saw this yesterday morning and realized I didn't have time to play with it yet. So I'm glad you're covering it.
Nope.
Ah, fie on you, Salesforce. Fie.
Also, it's a beta feature, right?
It's a beta feature. Yeah.
It looks like Andy also has a question, maybe.
I do. So is there any automation to running these tests that you're aware of? If I've got my flows in production with a test, if I attempt to deploy a new version, does it run these tests in the deployment process? Am I asking too much?
This is a beta version. Yeah, I had the exact same questions. From what I can tell, the answer is no. But I wouldn't be a bit surprised, Andy, if that's the way this is kind of going, which would be pretty nice to be able to do things. Because right now, if you want to deploy a flow as active, you have to have a test built for it. And it would be nice if we could declaratively build things. I mean, this has been something I know I've been asking and whining and complaining about for years. So I'm really excited to see that they're making some progress on this.
What do you think the future does hold with this feature? Are we going to have like test coverage you think for flows and that sort of thing?
I mean, who knows?
Got your magic ball out.
This is
your
really
crystal
only
ball.
on record triggered flows right now. So on one hand, if I put on my developer hat, I would say, yes, I think we should, right? Because if we think about any sort of automation that's happening automatically through someone saving a record, you want to make sure it's going to work as designed. If I put on my admin hat, I could go either way on that. Like, I think it's a really good, valuable feature that from a best practice standpoint, I think people should start to use, but I'm not sure if it's the must have to have it standpoint, but I would really like it to be one of those like, hey, if you want to deploy flows active, you have to have at least this, if not an Apex unit test running on to test outputs, because that makes more sense to me. Because I'm not sure, if you think of coverage, what that would really mean in this context. Because when we're looking at this flow, in this particular item, we can go through and say, oh, here's the pathway it went. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that would be coverage in how I would define it. I guess it would be just as equivalent of calling it code coverage, because in Apex, it just checks to see if that line of code was run, not whether or not you checked it out. That line of code did what you expected to do. But I think just generally speaking, if they can really flush this feature out, I would love to see it be more used by admins just from a best practice standpoint. I'm not sure we're going to be able to get to the point where you say you have to, because like if we go back to this, you can see one of the options is I can specify an actual account record, which makes sense from a testing standpoint if you're like doing individual testing, but not from a deployment standpoint, because your account isn't deployable, right? The record doesn't exist between environments. So yeah, I don't want to put ideas in Salesforce's head, but from my standpoint, it's more about making sure your flows, especially really complicated ones, do what you expect it to do. Because the example I had here where my logic was backwards, I hate to admit it, but I do that all the time. Just you're moving quickly and you know what you want it to do, but your brain is working one way and your fingers are doing something different. So from this standpoint, I really like having this test versus hitting the debug all the time, because sometimes you just want more control over what you're doing. Anything else? Any other questions? Comments? Rebuttals?
I had one more question I wanted to ask, and it goes all the way back to Orchestrator, and you may or may not know, but I, like a good wizard apprentice type person, watched your Salesforce Orchestrator live build that you did in the beginning of March, and I'm gonna drop that here for everyone in case you didn't watch this. I thought it was really, really well done, so thank you, Brian.
Oh, thank you.
In your build, when you were on an orchestrator, you realized that your steps needed to be in a different order. And you're like, I can't reorder these. I have to just basically delete what I have and recreate. Do you know if that was coming out in this release? Did you catch anything regarding that piece?
No, but I would say the reorder part was more of my pickiness. No, hear me out, because in the step, you could say this particular step runs like after this other step.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to do is I wanted to go in the order that it was running in, not make it run in that order from a visual standpoint. So yeah, there's so many other things with the orchestrator though. I don't think the visualization of the order is going to be high in the priority list.
Yeah.
The
And
issue
even
is
Andy
actually,
says not. Yeah.
the issue is actually with the canvas. It's the flow builder canvas that is, it's a free form canvas. There's no sense of order to the canvas.
Mm.
Because orchestrator is built on the canvas, the whole canvas would have to change. So there you go.
Yeah.
If
No
I,
technical reason, Andy.
if I were PM for a day, that also would not be on my immediate roadmap if I were PM.
Oh, there's so many other things that would want to have done on orchestrator first. Because to be quite honest, Jen, if you'd be better off planning your orchestrator better anyways to begin with.
I think that takes experience, which, you know, basically
None of us
have.
I mean, it's a general, it's one of those where it's a flow on top of a flow. It's a meta flow, basically.
Yeah. And I really
And
like that explanation.
I always said, like, way back when flow was first out, there's advantages to planning out before you start building your flow, what you need in your flow and what it looks like. And same holds true for orchestrator, if not more so. So since it's a flow on flow, of course it's more important that you plan it out ahead of time. Lynette,
Gotcha.
you asked about the number of limits of tests you can create. According to the release notes, it's 200 per flow.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
Thanks.
Please create 200 tests and show us.
I just,
Yes.
because it's called 1, 2, 3, and you only had 3 in your example, I was afraid you were only allowed 3.
Like I said, fun title, not very descriptive of what it's actually doing. Yeah, the one thing that I really wish this was here is, like, I would love, like, if I hit run here, it'll run them all, but it'll just tell me if it fails. Like, I don't get to see the path. I have to click onto each one and say run and view, which is slightly disappointing, but whatever. Anything else before we pass it off to Jen? Okay, if you think of other questions or comments after this fact, we'll be posting the recording of this as well as any slide decks to the community group. Feel free to ping a question there. Now I get to take off my hat because it's really hot.
You can see my screen, I assume.
Yes.
Awesome. And let me put my hat on. Feeling a little jealous of your hat. So all of my features are really anything that is non automation. So there's a couple good gems out there, a couple of things that excited me that I'm excited to talk about today. And then I got just a couple of little demos for you all. So the most exciting non-automation feature that I am just thrilled about is the ability to customize and filter related lists and build out dynamic related lists in our pages. So it's super exciting. I have a million ideas. The other thing you can do with this is you can actually tailor your action buttons for each of your individual dynamic related lists. And the only question that I am still unsure about is how this may impact our load times. I don't know. Doesn't seem to be much of a limit to how many of these I can like create and create filters and do all kinds of fancy stuff with. So I'm very curious when I start hitting those limits, because
What did the
like I
page?
said, I
Did
have
you
some
do a
ideas.
page optimizer and see if it said anything
Maybe we'll
different?
take a look at that. So I want to demo this right out of the gate here. So let me get into my org. So here I am logged into Salesforce. I'm on my accounts page. Let's take a look at this feature. I'm going to go to my edit page from here to open up this lightning page. And then we can walk through a little bit of how this might work. So I will, right now, I have like nothing in this org and I'm already at like a moderate performance. So that's exciting. here's my related list. Now I have the opportunities related list here. So my use case is I would love to see open opportunities and closed opportunities, and actually 2 different list views, because my end users get confused what's open, what's not open, even though the stage is listed. So when I click on this component, I can upgrade it to a dynamic related list. Now, I want to mention, if you upgrade this, you can always revert back. It's not like hey, if you upgrade, you're stuck with it. You can revert back, and we can show you that too. So I'm going to go ahead and upgrade. Dun, dun, dun. And much like a lot of dynamic pages that you might see, we get this configuration for the dynamic related list. So from here, I'm just going to scroll down. I'm going to leave a lot of this the same as it was. And then you can do a sort order. You can sort by a specific field if you wish to. But what I'm really interested in is the adding a filter. And what I want is, well, not that. What I want is I want my closed fields, let's say, equals false. So this would be all of my open opportunities. Because I am just selecting this filter, I'm just going to close all my prompts that I get. I'm going to want to also relabel this to just being open opportunities. And we're just going to leave it really simple like that. Okay. So now that I'm applying this, I'm just going to go ahead and save my page. I want to add another related list for all of my closed opportunities. So in my components, I'm going to search for my dynamic related list. So I just want to show you there's dynamic related lists, but we still have our normal related list single. So just keep in mind that you can select one or the other. So I'm going to stick this right underneath my open opportunities and configure this for us. So opportunities, I'm going to relabel this to closed opportunities, pretty much leaving everything the same, and then adding my filter to closed equals true.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Are all your related lists in that tab single lists?
They are, but they don't have to be. You could still have like the full related list component on here.
Mhm.
But then I think when you do that, you'll end up getting like duplicate related lists, right? So let me throw this guy on here.
Yeah,
and
because
we'll
if
see.
you
We'll
if
take
you
a
had the related list component that shows all related lists.
Yeah.
So you would have
Yeah.
that in addition to whatever you have as your single or dynamic.
Exactly. Yep.
But that might be one reason, Jen, why your page was moderate, because of the number of single related lists you had.
Right. But you'll just have, I guess, just take a look at what you have configured in your org too. Like if you're using the related lists
Mhm.
component, or if you're using single or
Yeah, I don't
whatnot.
know
You might
about
have to
you.
make an adjustment.
You, Nathan, but when it comes to related lists, I usually only use the single, or I guess now the dynamic, if I want to have a particular related list highlighted, which means I'm not burying it in the related tab. Like I use the related tab for the here's everything, and then I'll call out specific related lists either as its own tab or not even in the tab, like up on by the highlights panel or the side panel or whatever.
Yeah, so maybe I would create another tab here that just says opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way I would have my single dynamic lists of opportunities there. I like that. So I don't know if you noticed, but the second related list that for my closed opportunities that I created, it doesn't have any action buttons. Well, you can control that too. So I love that idea. I can add my actions. These are just standard actions. So if I wanted my new button on my closed opportunities, might not make sense in this case because these are closed opportunities. Why am I creating a new from there? I would probably want to create it for my open. So, but just wanted to show you and demonstrate that you can actually add those actions per related list as well. And then of course you can set your component visibility. So maybe you have a certain situation where you want to display or not display one of these dynamic related lists. And that's it. Let's go ahead and hit save again. And then for me to see my page runtime, is that just my page analysis or is that
Mhm.
something else? So still moderate?
I don't know if you have to reload for that to
Okay.
recalculate though.
Okay. Maybe I just need to refresh my browser. Let's see.
Margie, you have a question?
I do have a question. I was reading in the release notes that you can only display up to 30 records on the dynamic.
Yeah.
So is there any kind of roadmap of when that might increase? And also you can't do a VBAC.
So I think you're talking about, your question is the number of records to display on these is 30. Right now mine's set to 10, but I believe that again, I'm just gonna hit save for good measure. My page analysis didn't change.
No.
And then let me go back to the actual record just so we can see what this looks like now. And then Margie will talk about that a little bit more. There we go. Here's my open opportunities related list and my closed opportunities relatedness list. So I don't have, I mean, there's only a couple of opportunities. So I think I have to change my amount of, because it's not going to show me the view all. But if I had, let me just change this to test that one out. I think that it'll still have the view all button at the bottom if your list is more than the number displayed. So if I change that to just 2, let's try it.
Do you want to change it to 1 because you only have 2?
Yeah, I suppose I did, but that's pretty easy to create a new opportunity. Let's do
This is how Jen pads her sales pipeline.
it's all closed lost though. Okay, so it says 2+ now. How do I see? Maybe you're right, Margie. Maybe there isn't a view all. What's going on there? That's terrible. Can't see a view all button, but
do you have to select that on? That seems like a really big oversight.
that is.
So I read, and maybe it was Salesforce then, that view all is not available currently
for the dynamic. That
Right.
puts a huge damper on my life.
Sorry.
So. The number one most excited feature, and Margie swoops in. That's a really good.
The first thing I saw, and I was really bummed when I saw that.
Jen, you can't click on the related list name. That's not clickable. Closed up or no?
No, you can't. So
Boo.
maybe this is why you would have that other non-dynamic related list of just all opportunities in another tab or something. Might be a good workaround. That sounds terrible, but
yeah, I mean, it's a really neat feature. Just they've got some work to do.
Yeah, they have some work to do. So I'll increase your, and if you increase the amount, then your related list is just going to get really long and take up a lot of room. Another reason why Brian's idea of creating a tab specifically was kind of a good one. So if there's an idea out there, I will definitely be voting. All right, well.
That's a bummer.
It's a bummer. I'm bummed now. That's okay. Let me go back to my presentation. So I do have other exciting things. Address fields, they're beta, but I'm really excited about address fields being able to add the additional kind of compound data type for addresses. What I love about this is you can use the Google lookup to populate your addresses. A couple of things I noticed in the release notes is you have to have the state and country pick lists enabled. If you do not have your state and country pick list enabled, make some time for it. It takes quite a while. I did that in a couple different orgs at this point, most recently my current org, and it is quite the little project.
Not everyone can use them.
and not everybody can use them. Yeah. So just something to keep in mind there. There are some limitations. So I have a link to limits to take a look at for if this is something you want to utilize for you to take a look at and decide if this is a good feature for you. And then if you want to join the beta program, it is available within the Trailblazer community as well. I usually don't join betas. I usually don't touch stuff until it's out of beta, other than playing with it in my sandbox a little bit.
And as part of that, these beta fields are now accessible to add to your screen flows too.
Nice. All right. Not quite as fun, but security permissions restrictions. Want to mention MFA. We should all be following our MFA requirement because we are contractually required to as of February. In the future, they are going to be automatically enabling this and enforcing this onto clients. So something to take a look at for your roadmap, something to be aware of. If you have it already enabled, you should be good, but I just wanted to mention that they're going to be enforcing it.
Yeah. And I think the start of that is in September was the earliest I think I saw for Across the Clouds.
Yeah, I think that you are right. I'm just pulling it up because they do have this really nice little roadmap out there for it. Yeah, September 2023. So not this year. Next year. All right. Permission set expiration, and there's an enhanced UI. So there's actually a update to this underneath your release updates. So take a look at it, see if this is something that you're ready to enable. It just kind of enhances the UI and allows us to set permissions based off of groups. So not only on the user level, but like a group level or a permission set level, you can actually set your expirations now as well.
I love expirations.
So enhanced user experience also just with managing your permission sets. I wanted to show you where this was underneath user management. There's the enhanced permission set component view, which is a nice, fun user interface, and then permission sets and permission set group assignment expirations as well. So just wanted to kind of call out where that information was and where it lived and how to get to it. So the other one is, so I will admit I struggle a little bit with restriction rules yet. I haven't had the use case for it basically, but if you are using external objects, you can now use restriction rules with your external objects. And then also you can utilize single like pick list values for supporting basically criteria for you to utilize restrictions. So adding a pick list to your restriction or your scoping rule allows just a little bit more flexibility if you wanted to have kind of some added control there. Guess what type of pick list is not supported?
Multi-pick list.
True. So something else to keep in mind.
I'm curious, is anyone using restrictions yet?
Tried really hard to find a good use case for these, but I have not yet.
I mean, the only thing I can
Me
think of
either.
is like, you want them to be able to see the parent, but not the children, and they would normally be able to see the children without the restriction rules.
Right.
And that seems,
My original thought on that was like, oh, if I wanted to hide activities, for example, maybe for accounts that are shared amongst different people, but it's a stretch for me.
Andy, do you have a good use case for why someone might use restrictions?
No, not yet. I haven't really thought about it in any way.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason
Yeah.
why I don't feel very well educated on it, because I just can't figure out a good use case.
I get the feeling it's one of those useful features for really big orgs with complicated sharing models.
Search Manager. So this is kind of cool. You can see the objects and fields that are searchable within this new Search Manager. You can find it in Setup. What is interesting about this is you can see it will only display the objects that are actually searchable for you, and then the different fields within those objects. And then you also have filters. So if you wanted to filter specifically on, show me all fields that are searchable or all fields that are not searchable or a certain type, that sort of thing, you can take a look at it. I did test this to see if you create a field on an object, it will show up right away. So I created my field, went to my Search Manager, found it, no problem. So that was kind of cool. I'm not sure where they're going with this yet. I think it's interesting, but there's no action really for me to take within these screens. I can see if something's searchable. Okay.
I mean,
Great.
I like this because I've gotten questions from end users like, can I search by ...
Right.
And it's nice to have a reference, but I agree with you. It's not. It's a reference.
It's a reference. So maybe they're going to be doing more with it. I'm excited to see what else comes out. Reports. So for anyone that knows me, they know how much I love reports. So there's a couple of demos that I'll do on this, but then let's just kind of run through the list here quickly. So the report types, for new reports, there is a new UI for creating reports. So this is something that is a significant enough change that I would suggest that you send something out to your end users about it, because they're gonna get that screen and they're gonna be like, well, this looks different, and they probably need a little extra hand holding to how to use it. Also, you can create reports based on specific selected objects. So this is kind of a beta feature here. Something that I thought was really interesting. Let me take a look at my notes. I don't know how to enable this beta feature. You probably have to contact support because I couldn't find it. So I couldn't test with it. I couldn't play with it. And let me see, actually, I want to pull that one up again. If there was anything else there worth mentioning, or if they had a screenshot for us. Yeah. So show me report types with these specific objects. We'll take a look at that and see if we can. I can't actually demo it. That's my problem with the beta feature. But it is pretty interesting to see. I'm going to just zoom in if you can see this screenshot a little bit better. So I want to create a report with accounts and contacts, or I want to create a report with accounts and cases, that type of thing, which is pretty cool. And then it'll only show you the report types that contain those specific objects. I say it all the time, like the hardest part of creating a report is knowing what report type to select from. Always verify the objects it includes, the fields that it includes, and this new feature with the report create is really nice to help with that. Editing, inline editing for reports. So inline editing is a great feature. It's now GA with multiple fields. There are some issues with this. I will show you at least right now in my sandbox where I cringed a couple of times. So couple gotchas there. Summary functions. So that's my screenshot here. You can now, there's a new summary function for median, which is a great feature if you're looking for that. And then this one was interesting. Limiting results in tabular reports. So the use case they talk about, so basically within the filters tab of a report edit page, you can now add row limit. So if I only wanted to see the top 20 of my opportunities, I can just see the top 20 based on maybe the estimated revenue or something, or estimated amount. but I'm not quite grasping the use case for it. The use case that they had was, hey, then you can add it to your dashboard and you can limit the number of records it pulls in. And I'm sitting here going, well, sure, but I can do that anyway within the dashboard itself and limit the number of records and only show the top 20. What I like about doing it in the dashboard instead of on the report, then if my user wants to drill down into the report further, they can see not only the top 20, but they could maybe see, they can adjust the filter and see more. If I hard code it, I'm going to call it a hard code, even though it's not really hard coded. But if I add the limit on the report itself, it might improve performance when running the report, sure. But I will tell you, my end users are going to click on that report and they're going to be like, why do I only see 20 of these? I know I have more opportunities than 20.
The report says top 20.
Right?
I mean, this was
Sometimes-
something you could do in classic reports.
Yeah, you could.
I
You're
mean-
right. They're still getting some classic features in there. For me, I just it's cool, but I'm gonna get a lot of questions if I start utilizing it. That's what my hesitation is on filtering by row limit. My end users will not click on they will not notice the title says top 20, guarantee. They will not notice the filter when they click on the filter button, guarantee. Maybe I have some work to do with my end users.
Sounds like a culture problem, Jen.
It does. But those are just some of the problems that I could see kind of happening with this feature. All right, so we're going to take a look at the demo. In a moment. There we go. All right, so let me pull my org back.
Marie, that's a very good use case. I like that. So she says that
Yeah, I'm not paying attention to the
I
chat
know you're
anymore,
not.
so
that you're using the rows limits for text messaging because they can only send so many texts a day. So this is how they get along. So they would have to switch back to classic previously to be able to do it.
that's interesting. But do you just have to switch back to classic to add the row limit and then it runs still in
Yeah,
Lightning?
you would switch to classic, set your row limit, and then you could still run it in Lightning.
Interesting.
It was a pain because you couldn't go back through and edit it again. You had to start all over.
Okay. Well, good use case for you. I'm glad that you will find value in this one. All right, so let's take a look at this new report feature. So we're going to click on reports tab. We're going to click on our new report button. And this will be the create report. Basically, it's like kind of like the list views that the report tab has itself. I'm going to land on most recently used. That's a standard feature of Salesforce. You always land on most recently used in most situations. Do I love that? Not exactly, because I probably will go to all pretty quickly. Because if I start typing in here like cases, I'm not going to see my report type, and I'm going to be like, well, where's my report type? So clicking on all and then be able to grab that, report type that you're looking for.
I agree, Jen. Lots of users are going to get tripped up.
Yeah, that's why. Yep. So, and then there's another thing too, like, okay, cool. How do I run this report? Well, I can click on cases. And then I get another screen. And then here is what I think is awesome. I can see all the details related to this specific report, all the objects that are used in this report. So account, ownership, user, like a lot of information, context, cases, all that kind of good stuff. And then I can even see the fields. So if I know I need to make sure that my case ID is included in the report, I can actually search and check to see if that field is available, or my account name. I can check and see, okay, yeah, this seems like the right report that I want to use to start building. And then of course you can click on start report. I haven't clicked on this button yet. Oh,
Let's
hide
see,
report type. Yeah.
You know what's still missing? Is the report type description. So you remember if you're creating custom report types, it gives you that little
Ah.
box that would show up on the right-hand panel in Classic. Still can't see it.
Still can't see it. Oh, interesting. I did not even notice. One thing that you can see though, which I love, is the category. Is this a standard report type or is this a custom? I do like that feature because what I do right now is on all my custom report types that I build, I append it with CRT, custom report type. And then that way I know that it's custom versus standard when I'm working in the UI. The other way that you can run this is you can click on this little drop down here. And again, that's something that the user would normally do, I don't think. And then I can do like start report or look at my details at that point. So click on start report and we're added to our normal report build. Let's see if there's anything else there I wanted to point out. I don't think so. So pretty nice features. And let's look at, I'm going to go back to a report here. Let's look at the inline editing.
Aubrey's excited about that.
Yay.
I
I'm
think she's
excited
volunteering
too.
to train all your users.
I think she just did. She's my go-to anyway when it comes to I like that little smirk.
Fine, I will train the users. I usually train the users.
I feel like we could do a nice did you know on this feature.
I think we could.
I think we could. All right, so inline editing. I love this feature. We've been using it for a while. There are some gotchas with it. There are some fields still, like the birth date fields on contacts is not editable in inline editing, which I find really fun. But what I want to show you is just inline editing in general and kind of how it works. So from here, let's say that I want to change some opportunity names. It's not a great use case, but I'm going to. So if you might notice, I don't know if any of you used inline editing yet in your orgs, but you may notice that something here is missing. How do I apply this change? There used to be a cancel and reply button listed here.
Enter.
And it's gone. So if I hit enter, nothing happens. Oh, there it goes. It's just delayed. Enter. But what if I made a mistake, Brian, and I don't want to actually commit to this?
Click the cancel button.
I can click the cancel button on the bottom. But what if I'm looking at this and I'm saying, oh, I'm going to add
Hit
this
escape.
here. Oh, I got to click off. I gotta hit tab or enter works. You think if I hit escape, it can?
Yeah,
do
so
it?
like you start typing something and you go, oh, I don't want that if you hit escape.
Escape, yes.
See, it doesn't save that. It doesn't
It didn't
temporarily save
it.
the change.
Yep. And then I can save to commit all of my changes. I don't love this change. If this is where they're going with this, I don't love it.
It just reverted your data too.
That's interesting. Hold on, let me refresh. No,
There
I
it
just had
is.
to refresh.
That's weird.
Yeah, I don't love this. I want my buttons back. I posted to the community about it because my end users are going to not know that they need to hit enter or escape or whatever. It's not as intuitive. I feel like
It's a nice option, but both should be available.
both should be available. I agree. Yes. Where is my button? So that was one noticeable change that I had seen with editing multiple fields on the report run page. Okay, so any questions or anything about reports? All right, so I'm gonna pull my slide back up. Keeping your org in tip-top shape. Some other really fun features I like for us admins is getting a list of custom pick list fields with inactive values. Now, this is interesting. You can get an email notification when your custom pick list fields have more than 4,000 inactive values. All right, if you've got 4,000 inactive values, do you even know how to Salesforce? Because I just think that's a little ridiculous.
It just means you don't have a restricted pick list fields and you're updating it through imports and API calls.
Yep, Brian's right. We did a COVID response program 2 summers ago and forgot to restrict like an industry field and ended up with 7,000 different variations on industry. That is definitely a thing that happens.
Oh man. Well, I bet you wish that you had this feature when you hit that mark, because you would have been like, wait a minute. The other thing that's really cool about this is that they gave us a cleanup inactive pick list values. So you can actually go to your unused values and clean them up. Now, when it says unused values, it's inactive values, but is it really unused? Does that mean that there are no records using that pick list value? I'm not sure. It wasn't clear on what that meant by delete unused values. If that meant all of your inactive values were just going to go away, or if it literally meant if no records have this value of country to country, let's say, then it would delete that inactive value. It wasn't clear.
I don't think it means that the value isn't set on any record. I think it's
just to
as
delete.
in it is not active.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, but I wasn't sure because it didn't explicitly say how that feature worked. But it is a beta feature.
And
so.
do you know what happens if you delete multiple values at once? Does it prompt you to say what do you want to replace it with?
If you do multiple, I know that it does if you do one at a time, but I don't know about multiple. What does it do, Brian? I feel like
I don't know. I haven't tested it. You're the one that claimed this particular item.
Because you would select it and then delete unused values.
Yeah.
I'm assuming. Nope, I can't.
Or delete
selected.
selected.
I didn't test it because it was beta and I didn't know how to turn it on.
That's fair.
But something to test. Other stuff that is cool, we mentioned the formulas have new functions. I will not rattle all of them off for you, but they're basically like date and time, math, text functions. Cool that they're adding to it. I couldn't think of a use case for any of the new ones that they had, but they were very, very specific. Let's look at them. Also, shout out to Steve Moe and his amazing little meme here on the formula compile size. It did get an increase. If you noticed, they know it. I feel like this is a sneaky little thing that sneaked in and no one really knew about it, but that's one of those little things that can really have a big impact for anyone that is fancy with their formulas. Keep in mind, big formulas can also impact your load.
Well, it doesn't take long to hit that either.
No, it doesn't.
Especially because if you're nesting formulas, because it all compiles up there.
Yeah. So strengthen your formulas with new functions. Here are all your new functions. Again, returns of the day of the calendar year, 1 through 366. Okay.
That's great.
That's great. I don't know what I'm going to do with that. The other one I saw that was interesting is like, this one returns lowercase of the first character with each word in uppercase. So it's like doing like a camel case.
It's proper case.
Proper case. Interesting. So some good ones, returns pi, in case you need that in your math equations. All good stuff.
And sometimes you need to measure the circumference.
Sometimes you do. I don't, but someone might. All right. I'm almost done. Continuing with some other random cool stuff. I think Aubrey might like this one. Sharing individual campaigns with colleagues in Lightning. So you used to be able to share, it's basically a manual share and that's this screenshot in the lower corner here. Manual sharing has been brought to campaigns. So if that was something that you had your campaigns locked down for sharing, kind of private model, then you can open access back up with the sharing. And then of course you also get the sharing hierarchy so that you can see who has this all been shared with. So that's kind of a nice feature. You can also configure a no reply address in your org wide address setup. So you can just access your organization wide. There's now that default no reply address, and then you can allow certain profiles to access it. So that was kind of nice. Okay, this next one, you guys, I was way too excited for. It's such a small thing, but I just feel like it really makes a big impact. So whoever did this, I love them. Overdue tasks. If it's overdue, your date fields now turn red. Just great, because it's so hard sometimes for users to see that in their list views. What is overdue? We are constantly chasing down people to, hey, your tasks are overdue. This is a nice kind of slap in the face for somebody, like, it's red. It needs your attention. I love adding color into Salesforce to draw people's eyes in. So this was a nice little additive that is so easy and yet so impactful.
Lexi, I saw that you had your hand up. Did you have a question or something to add?
Oh no, I just did the
The
clapping
clapping?
reaction
Oh, the
because
clapping
that
thing?
is
Oh,
so
sure.
exciting.
I was like, oh my gosh, I'm way too excited about this feature. It's so simple, but
Now we just need to do that to opportunity close date.
they do have that in what is that called? I can't remember the feature that they use for like sales. It's part of like
the high velocity sales.
I think it's high velocity. Yeah.
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 The thing
I
you have to
think it
pay
might
more
be in
for?
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if they did it here, maybe they can do it there. I don't know. Or maybe
it's
do that for them.
CSS. I mean,
yeah. Also, the other thing that I found so satisfying is when you create pick list values that are duplicates, it now will tell you which pick list value it is.
oh, that is so nice.
That is your duplicate. Now, I didn't test this to see if you had multiple, like if you listed it like, a couple of them, what it would do, but I'm hoping it just adds them on. I'm not sure. But I thought that was a really great additive for us admins as well, because I have to pull up pick list, figure out which one it is, and then get rid of it on my screen. So that is all the features that I wanted to highlight. I have one more shout out for Release Readiness Live is coming up towards the end of May here. If you haven't attended or seen these, they do record them, which is great. I like to watch it in double time while I'm doing the dishes. I know. But really nice features that they like to highlight. A couple ones that I like to always watch is the admin preview live. I also enjoy watching Sales Cloud. However, I do see a lot of high velocity sales in that Release Readiness Live. And then they also have a specific flow one. They've been doing that one for the last few releases because it's so flow heavy. And then of course, we also have all of our industry clouds available to us. And one thing I wanted to point out in case you missed the memo, Pardot did get branded to Marketing Cloud Account Engagement powered by Pardot. I hope that this doesn't mean that our Pardot puppies end up going away, because that was always a fun little pun that they did. So I wanted to share those. They're available on the success community, the Trailblazer community. If you're not a part of the Release Readiness group, check it out, because they always post really good resources. And then also lots of people asking questions like me with my what happened to my buttons on my editing, inline editing for reports.
I do have something to add to this list, which is tomorrow at 10:30 Pacific. It's Automate This. This is a Salesforce ongoing kind of like, I don't know, it's not a webinar, but it's almost, I don't know what you would call it, web series or something, hosted by Jennifer Lee. And the topic tomorrow is migrating workflow rules and processes to Flow. So you may
Is
be
she
interested
doing
in
a
that.
live stream for that?
Yeah, it's,
I watched the first live stream.
I haven't seen any of them, but Jen Lee does everything wonderful.
She did. She had some technology issues,
and then
unfortunately.
I
the
did
first
just
time.
test your duplicate rule, and it does do comma separated values. At this
Oh,
point.
the duplicate pick lists?
Yes.
Comma separated values for all the duplicates you have.
Which is nice.
Awesome. Don't know if anyone had any questions. How about governor limits? Scott, any changes with governor limits?
Not that I saw.
Read the release notes.
Yeah.
Come on, it was only 500 and hold on, I'll tell you how many pages it was. 578 pages, Scott. What are you doing? It's not like you're busy.
That's what, an afternoon? I mean, come on.
Of course, a lot of it we skip because it's not
Let's see. Increase apex limits for bulk API for populating big objects.
there's a governor limit
There,
change.
glad you know.
I'm concerned a little bit, honestly, about the CPU limit in our flows.
I mean, you're probably not going to run into it with screen flows.
Well, we just ran into
But-
one like this week.
Well, because
But I
it's
blame
whatever
user
it
error.
would have to be in between screen elements.
Yeah, it happened on a create record, but I don't know why. It was very
Do you have
cryptic.
other automation that kicks off when you create that type of record?
Yes.
That would be why. Because it's a shared limit, so that counts as a transaction. So any flows, processes, or apex that gets fired when you create a record for that object is all pulled together on the CPU limit.
Oh no.
Yep.
Nathan, did you have a question?
Not a question. I've actually had that situation where I've needed to have stuff go in the background while creating records. And I've tested to find out around what that limit is and then put in a screen flow that says, I'm sorry, this is taking so long. Hit continue in order to break that.
Oh, okay. Or can you do like a pause or something in your
Yeah,
flow
it's the
for-
equivalent of pretty much a pause, but I'm just getting the user to just click a button. So it pretty much just says, I'm sorry, this is taking so long. Please press continue.
Oh,
Nathan,
interesting.
that sounds like a great thing to present to the user group. I'm serious. I think that's a cool idea.
It is a cool idea.
Just had to think out how I would make it work. But yeah, potentially.
You might be getting a message from Brian.
Sounds good.
That's a good idea, though. I wasn't sure how to solve for it, so that's a really good idea. A pause or a screen. I'm taking notes.
Yeah, literally I have it counting as it goes along. And then once it hits a limit, it then gives the pause button. And then if
What
it
do you
hits
mean
that
by
limit,
you have it counting?
usually it's doing a loop. So in my use case, I'm creating a lot of or copying a lot of other records that some of the software we're using does additional actions on each of those. So it adds up pretty quickly.
Yeah, so that wouldn't actually fix your problem, Jen. Because
Yeah.
yours is happening after your create element is happening.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
still pretty cool use case. Because the only other thing I could think of doing in your circumstance is changing it so that part gets fired asynchronously. But that's gonna be so weird to try to do.
Yeah, I want to do some more testing in my sandbox to see if I can hit that CPU limit. But I know exactly what it's saying, that there's other actions happening. I know exactly what's happening to that one. So
Well, thank you for everyone for attending,
yeah.
and keep
We'll
your
get the
eyes out for the
recording.
Milwaukee ones. Yeah, we'll get the recording probably later this afternoon. And
Yeah,
then,
thank you so much. This was great.
Thanks for coming.
And then our next meeting is tentatively August, right?
Yeah. Wait,
No, July.
July. Don't forget about July. So around July 12th, I believe, is the second Tuesday of the month.
Yep.
So we'll try and
And
hit
as
that.
always, if anyone's got topics or things you want to learn or talk about, either you present or you want to hear about, please let us know. Because, you know, Jen and I, we eventually do run out of ideas and just kind of sit and stare at each other across the Zoom going, what should we do next month?
What do you want to talk about?
I don't know. What do you want to talk about?
Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye.